Hello everyone and welcome to another Foul Original. As mentioned in our last video, 1991 would be a big year for WWF, now WWE game releases. Before the true rise of Nintendo and Sega in Europe, microcomputers like the Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, ZX Spectrum, and PCs running DOS reigned supreme. This time, we look at 1991's WWF WrestleMania on these systems. The game was developed now by British developer Twilight and published by Ocean Software for the Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and DOS-based PC systems. This multi-platform approach meant that pretty much every base was covered when it came to the large microcomputer install base in Europe, especially right here in the UK. The game was released on cassette and floppy disk for these systems in 1991. There are visual differences between the different ports available, but the core gameplay mechanics and presentation are the same. Matches have a 5-minute time limit, and a count out or draw count like losing a match. Each of the wrestlers had the same basic moveset made up of attacks like punches and kicks. You can hit moves once you have run the ropes, such as drop kicks and clotheslines. You have a signature grapple move for each of the playable characters, like a pile driver if you waggle your joystick. That's not a euphemism, but a core part of a lot of games on microcomputers. You also have ground attacks like an elbow or knee drop. You can hit top rope aerial moves from the turnbuckle like a drop kick or double axe handle smash. You can take the fight to the outside of the ring again this time round. There is also a folding chair that can be picked up and used. This can only be used on the outside. There's no disqualification for this either. You also have a 20 count to get back into the ring, so you can take a little time if you want. The single player mode has two options to choose from: compete for the belt or practice mode. In compete for the belt, you pick your wrestler and face off against 5 other WWF superstars. You must defeat Mr. Perfect, the Warlord, $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, the Mountie, and Sergeant Slaughter. If you lose any of the matches, you do have a chance to continue if you have enough credits left. If you manage to win all these matches, you'll become the WWF World Heavyweight Champion. Between each of the matches, you'll get a quick promo between the two wrestlers in the matchup. Your opponent will taunt you, and you will get a chance to select a response from a list. A really nice touch here. In practice mode, you can hone your skills for upcoming matches. This is against a non-moving computer-controlled player. This is always Mr. Perfect. If you have a second joystick plugged in, a friend can control this wrestler, but it will always be Mr. Perfect. This is the extent of the multiplayer mode on this game, and feels a little lacking, to be truly honest. This was a multi-platform release, and each of the ports had a slightly different look to them depending on the power of the machine. Again, each of these versions has a similar presentation, with each of the machines trying their best to output the original vision of the game. Some of these may have just been monochrome or with limited colors. I would say that the ZX Spectrum is the one which would look, and I say this with the utmost respect, the worst. The PC DOS version is probably the most familiar one to fans from the US and has the highest graphical fidelity of the bunch. The game is presented in a side-on view and will be very familiar to people who have played any of the Ocean Software games of that era. Looking in the background, you get the infamous Ocean branding throughout. Between matches, you get a TV-style presentation of the matches, and this also looks great on all of the versions. Of course, it does look the best on the DOS version. Depending on the version, you'll get nice, detailed, colourful sprites with some beautiful custom animations or lo-fi versions on some systems. Each of the wrestlers are recognisable, and you get a real sense that some care and attention went into putting this game together. There's a minimal crowd in the arena, and even a simple Titantron in the background, which changes depending on the matchup. Great use of the screen real estate for the health bar, and the timer are all clearly visible throughout the match. Definitely one of the best looking wrestling games on the microcomputers of the time, with some impressive visuals on each of the versions. you've got to remember that for 1991, this was amazing. This game gives you 3 wrestlers to choose from: Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, or the British Bulldog. Of course, as mentioned earlier, in the 2-player practice mode, you can play as Mr. Perfect. There is a looping theme throughout the intro and in between the matches. The actual matches have no music, but feature a healthy amount of sound effects. Everything from crowd pops every now and then to some classic 8-bit Foley sounds for punches. The game received praise on its release, and for those microcomputer owners without a Commodore 64, this would be their first chance to play a WWF licensed game. This would be followed up a year later with another release on those machines with WWF European Rampage in 1992. We'll get to that game very soon. Next time, we look at the third WWE game released in 1991, this time in the arcades. A game which holds a special place in the heart of many wrestling fans of a certain age. WWF WrestleFest. Did you play WWF WrestleMania on any of the microcomputers mentioned, or the DOS version? Who would you cast as your 3 playable wrestlers from today if this game was released now? Sound off in the comments. Like the video if you did, subscribe and hit the bell if you would, share if you can. This has been a Foul Original. Thanks for watching. See you next time.